All right, we're going to start. This is the first real day of Family Week because you got to sleep before it happened in a new bed. And so it's a little, I know some of you go home to sleep, but you should camp here. Anyway, so the first bit of programming we have on the agenda is the director of the center, Troy Bachman. And I could tell you all the things on his resume about being a Canterbury preacher, named by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and all these other kinds of things, but you already know a lot of them. And he's actually the person here who, more than anyone, is of no need of an introduction. In fact, he already showed it the first day yesterday. But he's a maverick. He's got a heart of gold. He's got his finger on the pulse in a way that's disorientating to people. He came into my class a couple of years ago and gave them a little talk, and he said, okay, a bunch of Benedictine Catholics, he said, the three most important things spiritually that happened in the 20th century for you are, number one, the Second Vatican Council. Number two, 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Number three, Black Pentecostal movement. Wait a second. So I had to restart from zero because they weren't sure about the Second Vatican Council, but some of the professors told them it was okay. And the other ones they'd never even heard of. So Tori is a maverick, and Tori has really brought himself and the whole feeling of Family Week is a result of the threads that he's pulled together. And so he's going to lead us through this beautiful poem by Wendell Berry, which is going to set the tone and the theme for the whole of the week. And without further ado, Brian.
So good to see all of you. It's really good to open up a little bit of Wendell Berry. I'm just curious, so I know my audience, how many? Oh, it's not on. Am I on now? Can you hear me? How's that? Is that better? So? No, some people say it's not. How about this? Is that better? Okay. Okay, just so I know my audience in terms of Wendell Berry, how many of you have never read Wendell Berry before this poem? Just raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, a good number of you. Okay. So how many of you get the other extreme? You know Wendell Berry, you love Wendell Berry, you read his poems all the time. Raise your hand. Okay. There's 3 or 4 of us in the room. That's good. along and were faithful to the good in each other. They suffered as their faith required. Now their union is consummate in earth, and the earth is their communion. And they enter the serene gravity of the rain, the hill's passage to the sea. After long striving, perfect peace. That's a wonderful tribute to a couple that he knew, most likely. He did a series of mad farmer poems, some of my favorite, where he's protesting some aspect of American life. And this one I actually have printed and I have it hanging in my office. I always told people, if you really wanted to kind of get inside my head, you need to read and understand this poem. It's what I call my talisman poem. Okay. Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. It's 2 pages, so I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to read this part because this is, again, these nuptial themes that he relishes in is commented on here, and I love this. I just think this is so wonderful. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields, lie easy in the shade, rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest to your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. I love that. Just love it. I can't get enough of this stuff. Okay, so this is a little bit of Wendell Berry. He's highly educated man. He's very much a country man. He loves to advocate for country people. And he's kept that language alive. Now, this poem that we're reading, The Country of Marriage, I want to give you some, this is not an explanation of the poem. I don't believe in explaining poems. Poems are the kind of literature that require the most of a reader. You have to interact with the poem. You have to bring all that you are in this moment to the poem. Okay? And that's why great poetry, you can read it again 10 years later, and you see so much more than you did the first time around. Because it keeps calling things out of you to have this dialogue that the poet is trying to create inside of your head. So I'm not going to give you an explanation of this poem, but I'm going to give you some handholds. I'm going to give you some ways to kind of approach it, to kind of enter into it, so that it can work its magic inside of you, because that's really what this poem is designed to do. And this is something that, how many, again, I actually got Wendell Berry. Most of you have not interacted with him at all. How many of you are your regular poetry readers? Okay? And don't worry about impressing anybody. Just, if you are, raise your hand. Okay, a handful of you are. So most of you are not poetry readers. Is that fair to say? On a regular basis. Is that okay? Okay. There's no confessional for this. I just wanted to know. Now, when I get us into this poem, I'm also going to get us into the Bible. Because Wendell Berry is a great Bible reader. And he's also, he knows the whole Western canon, and he really loves the metaphysical poets, which were mostly Anglican, but they still hadn't lost their Catholic worldview, the metaphysical poets, though there were some issues. So, to understand what Wendell's doing, you've got to understand the Bible, because he reads it deeply. And as I always used to tell my students, the Bible is a thick book, and we are thin readers. And that's part of the problem. And one of the things about reading Wendell Berry is that he thickens you up. He gets you ready to read the Bible better. wonderful gift. One of the things I want us to notice about the poem before we get into the actual stanzas, a stanza is basically just a poetic paragraph, right? And if you look at the poem, everybody has the poem in front of you? So there's copies up there. There's single page copies up there if you don't have it. But everybody needs to have a copy of the poem because we're actually going to look at lines. Kathy's handing them out. So make sure at least one per couple you can look on together as a couple. Now, so everybody has a copy. That's great. One thing you notice, just looking at a large scale, both front and back of that page, what do you notice? How many stanzas are there? 7. Okay, 7 stanzas. Now, it might be a hint for you, those of us who are biblically literate. There's 7 stanzas. He's talking about country, creation, the world, man and woman in it. And so that might be a hint that this is a creation poem. And I want to suggest to you that it is. It is a creation poem. But the question is which creation is he alluding to in this poem? Genesis 1, where there's 7 days. That's kind of the overt one. It's kind of the obvious one. But how about Genesis 2? Now, there's a long debate in biblical studies about second creation accounts and how to understand those two and how they're put together. But the second creation account, or second version of the creation, is not focused on 7 days. It's focused on 1 day. What day is that? The 6th day, the creation of the man and woman, right? Adam and Eve in the garden. So the narrator kind of telescopes down to that day, after kind of giving us the big picture of the 7 days, goes to the 6th day. Okay, that's the second creation account. That's an important one, and I think it's alluded to in this poem. But then the third creation account that I think he alludes to and works from is John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Now, this is an important creation poem for this poem, and I think really for all Christian thinking. And my theology is really quite simple here. In the first creation accounts, God makes the world first, and then he makes human beings second. But in the Gospel of John, what we have is a creation narrative in reverse. God is remaking human beings in the Gospel account. So that when he, in the book of Revelation, so that when he remakes heaven and earth, we don't screw it up the second time around. It's a lot harder to remake a person than to make them. When God made heaven and earth, and when he made man, he spoke. He spoke us into existence. When he remade us, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us and died and was resurrected. Now, this creation poem is playing off of all 3 of these creation poems. But this third poem, I think, is just always right beneath the surface. It's about remaking, how marriage remakes man and woman in God's image. Okay, I think that's the big picture I want to give you as we kind of enter into this poem, that we're entering into a creation poem. There's other things we could say about it. It's a pastoral poem. It's a nature poem. But I think the big thing here, you got a question or just scratch your hand? Okay, that's good. It's okay to scratch hands, but if you scratch hands this high, I'm going to call it. Now, a couple of other things I want to say about this poem as we kind of work our way through it is, and this is what I do. I'm actually going to do an experiment this fall and teach a class on Polish poetry. So, but when I teach people who, and I've never had a class on poetry, by the way, so just kind of, that's a Nobody, nobody has field tested my teaching on this. So you're the guinea pigs. But there's three systems of a poem. Every poem has three systems. There's a skeletal system. Okay, that's the line of the poem. That's what gives the poem its rhyme, its rhythm. Then there's the circulatory system of the poem. That's the sentence. Now sometimes the sentence will just go one line, but usually it'll go several lines. And some poems will just have one sentence in it with many, many lines. And so the poem is pumping meaning down all the way till it gets to that period. Sometimes when you're having a hard time with a poem, I just pull it apart and read the sentence. Okay, what is the sentence saying? If the skeletal system of the poem is the music of the poem, the skeletal system, the circulatory system is the story of the poem. It's the closest the poem gets to a narrative. The third
Hello? Hello. Check, check, 1, 2. Yeah. No, you're fine. All good.
All right, about 30 seconds before we close those doors. Ryan, can you help me? All right, we're going to start now with the second talk of the morning. Great, so it's a real privilege after 4 years to finally have one of the monks from the Abbey be able to come over and add to our adult formation. And it's a distinct privilege that it's Brother Maximilian, who entered the monastery when I entered the college and got his tenure the same year I got my tenure. I mean, his tenure was a permanent vow. I think he got a plot. Did you get a plot then?
In the graveyard?
Yeah.
I'm promised.
You're promised one. So anyway,
You don't have it yet.
he's promised a plot, and apparently he has something to speak about that to us about today. So Brother Maximilian is a monk here at our abbey, and he's going to talk to us about the plot that he's been given. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start briefly just with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, come to my assistance. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Saint Benedictine, Saint Scholastica. Saint Philip and Neri. All our guardian angels. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, about a week ago, when I was asked for a title for this, I was told by Aaron that the theme for Family Week would be the poem "The Country of Marriage." So I gave it a short read through and just picked out the most metal-sounding line that I could find, and figured I'd build something kind of around that. So what I hope to cover today will come through in a couple different ways, and I want to focus mainly on the meaning of the posturing vocations, and then kind of how Tori spoke about the poem, the how will be kind of particular to each and every family. It's unique. If I were to stand up here and offer you a formula from my point of view, it would probably involve just let your kids watch SpongeBob and play Pokemon until their brains dribble out their ears, and they'll turn out okay. Because that's what I do. This is advice from a father who loves you. Welcome it and faithfully put it into practice. Benedict is a good father who seeks to foster vocations in his own family, monastery. And he'll have some important things to say to us from the rule as I kind of like move along. But I really want to kind of open with that, highlighting the fact that he identifies himself as a father who loves the man to whom he's speaking. The man to whom he's speaking is someone who's considering the monastic life, but haven't yet entered into it. But he knows he has a good heart for that. Within the context of fostering vocations in a family, I want to propose that means a few things. Prayer within the family, witnessing who determines the path of the children and the married couple. And then lastly, and I think probably most strikingly, virginal love in the family. And I'll talk more about that. So prayer within the family, that's educating for relationship with God. Benedict says a little bit later in the prologue, a few lines later, he has already counted us as his sons. This happens in baptism. Witnessing who determines the path. Christ said to his disciples, "It is not you who have chosen me, but I who have chosen you." And then virginal love within the family. The definition of virginity that I'm going to be using comes to me specifically from Father Luigi Giussani, who founded Communion and Liberation. And he speaks of it as a deeper way of possessing and relating to everything in reality, but especially people, in the way that Jesus Christ does. So, firstly, prayer within the family. I want to talk about it mostly as like prayer as a relationship. We're all born and raised for a relationship. It's kind of like hardwired into our being. And the reason for that is because we're made in the image and likeness of God, who is relationship from eternity. He's one, but he's three persons in one. For me personally, I had the grace to be raised Catholic in a Catholic family, and I was baptized before I was a month old. So this reality has been operative in my being for a long time. And also, very importantly, and something that like cannot be taken for granted nowadays, is I had within the context of my upbringing, sacraments and prayer as a normal part of family life. There's certainly like, I don't want to stand up here and make it sound like I grew up in the perfect family. My parents got absolutely everything right. They made no mistakes. My mother's shaking her head right now. But I do want to say that like that's a big deal. Like I grew up in a home where it was like kind of like a normal thing for mom or dad to say like, I'm going to confession. Let's go together. So it was something that like was like modeled for me, but also that I was invited into. I was like shown how to do it. And the fact that they were witnessing to the effectiveness of that in their own lives. And I think probably like one of the big things for me is I had an intuitive awareness of where lied the true satisfaction of my heart. And for me personally, that really came alive when I was in college, when I encountered people and made friends who showed me that the meaning of prayer and the meaning of like my having been raised Catholic is for the sake of the relationship that God wants to have with me today. If you had asked me as like a senior going into like my freshman year here at Benedictine College back in 2012, I might have said, I think like the reason for why I want to go to Benedictine College is to grow in my faith. I am now able to say that what I thought that meant at that time was I'm going to learn more stuff about God. And that's what it means to grow in one's faith. Because I is like the most important reality in my life, and love is the thing that upholds me in my vocation, and love is the thing that upheld me as I was growing up in my family. So God used all of these things to keep me connected and ready for the witness of the friends that I made in college that really awakened me to the depth of the gift that I have as being Catholic, someone who participates and has participated in my entire life in the fullness of the truth. It wasn't difficult for me to look around and recognize that when I started doing some of the things that I saw my college friends doing, like actually going to mass on days that weren't Sunday, and like spending time in the chapel, just like quiet time at the end of classes before going on to my room to do my homework, and recognizing that this relationship that I was starting to make, this friendship that I was discovering with Christ, it for me was the experience. Romano Guardini has this beautiful line that perfectly corresponds to what I saw happening. In the experience of a great love, everything that happens becomes an event related to that love. And that love informs the meaning of everything else that's happening. So for me, I discovered and had laid my hands on the meaning of everything within the context of my relationship with Christ, and that I was growing within the context of prayer. And my being raised within the family that I was raised in is what primed me for that. I can tell you more about like how that led to me being a focused missionary, which led me to being like a monk here at the Abbey, but that's kind of the SparkNuts version of the rest of that. So I think that's like the first thing that I wanted. That encapsulates the first thing that I want to say, that fostering vocations means within the family, means prayer within the family. And then the second thing is witnessing who determines the path. And what I have to kind of like allude to here are eternity and happiness. Eternity and happiness. These are two experiences from my childhood that I very frequently include when I'm telling my vocation story, to kind of illuminate the fact that the line from the poem that Tori highlighted, we are more together than we know. How else could we keep on discovering that we are more together than we thought? For me, I was more monastic than I knew for longer in my life. How else could I discover that like the seeds were there for for so long before they came to kind of full and fruition? So 2 experiences. I remember being asked by my dad's brother Knights one time at a pancake breakfast in the parishes in the Midwest. Do you think you'll ever be a priest? I think I was thinking about this today, who exactly it was. I think it was Dick Holt. At least he was in the group. Do you think you'll ever be a priest? And I remember answering, and I can't remember how old I was. I was in like grade school or something. But I remember answering, and I didn't. No one had really like. I don't remember anyone explaining this to me, but I just knew that the answer was it's not up to me. And I was asked, what do you mean? And I said, it's up to God. And the response was, that's right. So there was this awareness of the fact that I had, that I don't really remember like being told, but that I must have been told, otherwise how would I know to answer it that way? That the one who determines my path is someone other than me. That means that my life is a gift. So the Holy Spirit determines the path, and the invitation for me is to be docile to how he's acting. Maybe some of you are wondering at this point, what does this relate to the title of this talk? That's an excellent question. I think simply put, sometimes being docile to the Holy Spirit feels like death, because it means sacrificing the preference that I have, the thing that I want to happen, that I think needs to happen, that like would be a really good idea for this, that, and the other reason, and like it's not panning out because it's not part of the plan, the real plan, not my plan, but like the Holy Spirit's plan. So that's the first thing. There was a horizon of eternity eternal one is the one who determines the path. The Holy Spirit's the one who's making the plan. And the task there is to be attentive and docile to what's happening. The second experience that I remember having as a child involves having a conversation with my mother. And I remember it must have been at around the time when I realized, like, my mom didn't necessarily have to marry my dad. Like, there are other guys in the world that she could have married. There are other women in the world that my dad could have married. And so I remember asking you, how do you know who you're supposed to marry? I remember you responding, whoever will help you most in getting to heaven. And that told me that my happiness is at stake within the context of my vocation as well. It's my happiness, not just hereafter in heaven, but in the sweet by and by, but also my happiness here and now. Because if I'm not experiencing the reality of what I'm headed towards now, I'm not headed towards it. So those are the two things that I want to kind of focus on within the context of witnessing who determines the path. There's someone else who's laying the groundwork here. There's someone else who's indicating the way. And it's not me. And it's also not you for your kids either. There's a lot of stewardship that, like, parents are entrusted with within the context of raising your children. A lot of judgment calls that need to be made, especially in terms of education. But when it comes to this, the Lord is the one who determines the path, and there's an education that needs to happen towards the flourishing of the freedom of the child, so that they're able to answer the call that comes. The third thing I want to focus on is virginal love within the family. That is to say, a deeper possession by means of letting go. That also feels like that, I'm sure. I want to say, it was a real gift to me, and I'm really grateful for. I probably should have started with this. Thanks for inviting me. It was a real gift to me to be invited to address you guys, and providential that our community retreat did not coincide with Family Week this year, so it just could happen. But it was a real gift for me because when I was thinking about this and looking at the things that Aaron had sent for prompts for the talk, I was reminded of an article that I've read a few times, but that he also had read to the table, that was published in Comunio back in summer of 2018, called "Do Not Hold Me" by Paolo Prosperi. If you're taking notes and you want further reading, that's it. "Do Not Hold Me" by Paolo Prosperi. You can find it online. You can download the PDF. "Do Not Hold Me" by Paolo Prosperi from Comunio. Because he says what I hope to say in relation to this topic in a much better way and with more references to the Brothers Karamazov, the Lord of the Rings, and Dante than I'm going to be able to pepper in right now. So, go read it. It's really thoroughly wonderful. What I want to say with this, though, and this is something that I only have a experience of by way of observation. My parents can tell you more about it after I'm done saying things to you all. Something I did not expect within the context of saying yes to my vocation was the fact that it was going to implicate yeses from the other people around me in my life. And to pull in what Paolo Prosperi has to say in "Do Not Hold Me," this is kind of related to how the lovers in Song of Songs need to not just stay in front of the fact that there's this, like, magnetizing attraction for both of them. The woman's really attracted to the man's really attracted to the woman, and there's an experience of beauty that's, like, magnetizing and that draws them together. However, at the same time, that same experience of beauty, which we experience in ways that are, like, more normal than just, like, the attraction of a man and a woman who are in love with each other, that same experience of beauty tells me that there's a mystery that needs to be respected within the beauty of the other in order to actually lay hold of it and experience it to the fullest. You want to think, for example, the experience of like beholding a beautiful painting, but like the way in which it's beheld isn't by getting absolutely as close to it as you possibly can, because then you're just going to be able to see like the one spot on it. You actually have to like step back and allow it to speak for itself. So the same is true within the context of awe and respect for the other, as mysteriously other. And the poem that you guys are looking at for this week is rife with references to this. And I think the line that Tori highlighted, we are more together than we know. How else could we keep on discovering we are more together than we thought? There's an element of mystery there. An element of mystery that's like intuitive but not fully experienced in the first encounter, and that refreshes it every single time it pops up again. Because in a way, it's an experience of God through the other in the marriage. O beauty ever ancient and ever new. So the next thing I want to talk about is what I see as like two drastic pitfalls families can fall into. And I'm going to give you guys like kind of the worst case scenario and say that like, there's kind of a spectrum on how bad they can be or how deep the pitfalls can get. The first one is the fear of losing the child to the vocation, and then like making machinations to keep them like dependent on like the family instead of like being free, like the poem says, to go out into the woods. I thought of the story of St. Thomas Aquinas, for example. His family did not want him to become a religious, so much so that they locked him in a tower with a prostitute.
That's not right. They wanted him to become a Benedictine so much that they locked him in a tower. They didn't want him to become a Dominican.
Either way, they did not want him. That's right, because I think they wanted him to be abbot.
They wanted him out of money.
But like they had their idea for like, this is how we think this man's life is supposed to go. He's like going to become an abbot of this monastery. They did not want him to follow the call of the Lord in his life, and their solution to that was prostitution. So that's like a really extreme example. But I want to say that like there are like lots of like small ways in which this can potentially happen within families as well. That's one side. And that's actually really helpful, because like I had misremembered it as just like, I thought they just didn't want him to be religious at all. Sometimes this can also happen, like the flip side of this, which in some ways is more sinister because it looks better. I have an idea of a certain kind of religious life that I want my child to follow, and I'm going to do what I can to try and make that happen. If you guys haven't read The Betrothed by Alessandro Manzoni, is that his name? Yeah. Go read it. There's a really, I'm thinking of one moment in particular in the novel where there's this woman who her entire life has been raised with the expectation that she's going to become a sister. And like her family has like fed this like to no end and stifled actively any other aspiration for any other kind of life. And it's suffocating for this poor woman. And it doesn't end well for her. I won't say more because you should just go read the book. The other thing is, the other potential pitfall is cutting the child off and rejecting them in their vocation. I was hard-pressed to think of like an example from the Bible or the lives of the saints. If anyone has one, please feel free to mention it during Q&A, or just like yell it out now. But I have the impression that because all of you are sitting here, chances are there's probably not many of you who are thinking of doing that outright. But once again, they're like kind of like little smaller ways in which this can kind of create it as well. If my child's going down a path that like I wouldn't like, that isn't a part of like the plan that I have for them in their life, are there little ways that I can kind of like become cold or cut them off? And the reason for why these things are kind of drastic pitfalls within the context of family life is because they both sidestep the real drama of staying in front of the relationship and allowing it to undergo change, which feels like death. And that really is the reason for why I thought of the line from the poem that I picked for the title, as the title. What I'm learning to give you is my death, to set you free of me, and me for myself, into the dark and the new light. This is striking too, because I'm really glad that you explained the poem and talked about, you just noted like, hey, there's 7 stanzas. What else has 7 things? I don't know, maybe like the days of the week. And not only does that correspond to like the days of the week, but it also corresponds to the creation narrative, which in the original creation narrative, Sunday would have been the first day, which means the 6th day would have been just like Good Friday. So Friday, just like Good Friday. So like in the 6th stanza, which corresponds to the 6th day of the week, Friday, he talks about death. He also talks about thirst. But the very next thing that he says after that, like the water of a deep stream, love is always too much. We did not make it, though we drink till we burst, we cannot have it all or want it all. It is abundance and survives our thirst. But at the very end of it, and I didn't realize this until I was reading it through and we were reading it through together this morning, he's still talking about the stream. It does not hold us, except we keep returning to its rich waters thirsty. We enter, willing to die, into the commonwealth of its joy. And the first thought that I had was like, that's baptism. That's what that is, that's baptism. And I think that's the really, really kind of fascinating thing that I want to hold in front of you within the context of undergoing the death of letting a child go, and like letting them go into the woods so that they can follow the vocation that the Lord has in store for them. It feels like death because it's a recapitulation of baptism, which doesn't end in death, because we come out of the waters into the new life of Christ. I want to read to you a few sections from the rule that I pay attention to a lot because I'm the vocations director for our community. And the first one that I'm going to read you is addressed more or less directly to me. This is chapter 58, the procedure for receiving brothers. Do not grant newcomers to the monastic life an easy entry, but as the apostle says, test the spirits to see if they are from God. Therefore, if someone comes and keeps knocking at the door, and if at the end of 4 or 5 days he has shown himself patient in bearing his harsh treatment and difficulty of entry, and has persisted in his request, then he should be allowed to enter and stay in the guest quarters for a few days. After that, he should live in the novitiate where the novices study, eat, and sleep. There's a verse about the novice master, and then it says this. The concern must be whether the novice truly seeks God, and whether he shows eagerness for the work of God, for obedience, and for trials. The novice should be clearly told all the hardships and difficulties that will lead him to God. Benedict's main concern here with a man coming to the monastery, first and foremost, that it is a vocation from the Holy Spirit, that he's being led by the Holy Spirit, and not by any other spirit, whether a spirit of the world, a spirit of broken humanity, or any spirits associated with the evil one. Secondly, that he is free. And he's free and he knows what he's involving himself in, what it is that he's saying yes to. There are lots of things that Benedict is interested in the rule, and pulling the wool over the eyes of the men who are interested in becoming monks is not one of them. But the reason for that is because he's a good father, and he knows that what it is that he has to offer will lead to life, because it doesn't just say the novice should be clearly told all the hardships and difficulties. He goes on to say that will lead him to God. So the proposal for these things is that undergoing the death of, and you name it, like, you know, you experience it in family life, I experience it in a monastery. Like, people getting on your nerves, you being impatient, just like kind of having a bad day, and then like having to deal with the fact that you're having a bad day, and that like you're making mistakes, and like you're kind of cranky, and you wish that you weren't. establish a school for the Lord's service. In drawing up its regulations, we hope to set down nothing harsh, nothing burdensome. The good of all concerned, however, may prompt us to a little strictness in order to amend faults and to safeguard love. Benedict is very interested in making sure that love is safeguarded, that the brothers are growing in love, that they love each other for the sake of Christ. Do not be daunted immediately by fear and run away from the road that leads to salvation. It is bound to be narrow at the outset. But as we progress in this way of life and in faith, we shall run on the path of God's commandments, our hearts overflowing with inexpressible delight of love. Never swerving from his instructions then, but faithfully observing his teaching in the monastery until death, we shall through patience share in the sufferings of Christ, that we may deserve also to share in his kingdom. Amen. I want to highlight specifically, just because I went and looked at the Latin, because I enjoyed the English phrase, our hearts overflowing with the inexpressible delight of love. And I was like, man, I wonder what he said in Latin when he was writing the rule. And what he says in Latin, I think, is actually more beautiful. He says, dilitato corde. So it's not just like my heart is overflowing with the inexpressible delight of love. My heart is being dilated. My heart is being expanded by going down the road. And I want to indicate that he doesn't say the road gets wider. It is bound to be narrow at the outset, but he never says, don't worry, it's going to be wider further on. Your heart will be wider. It will feel more expansive. But it won't get any wider itself. I suppose the last thing I want to say by way of wrapping up is really, I guess, just like thank you. Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for letting me witness to the beauty of my own vocation, the gift that it is to me, and thank you for the witness of your own vocations as well. There's a real way in which the married life informs the totality with which I am meant to live out my own vocation, and I'm here because there's a real way in which the virginal love that I'm called to express through living out my own vocation is meant to express to you guys the way of loving and possessing things that Christ does by means of letting things go so that they can be possessed in a more deep and more full way. And lastly, I want to thank Mom and Dad. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brother Maximilian. And I think that you thanked us for being here, but it's we who thank you for being here, because this is the soil of the Benedictine monastery that you belong to. And I think, though, that there's something else. It seems to me that the relationship between those who belong to the virgin state and those who belong to the married state, that relationship has to have a kind of nuptial character between it, in the sense that it's only because of your witness that this dilation of heart in us who are married can happen. And I think that might be also vice versa, that there's a sense in which, I've heard priests and religious say this before, they look at the chaos of, like, walking into one of our houses with, a half-eaten sandwich underneath the couch, and dirty diapers here and there. It's a kind of surprise, the kind of concrete sacrifice of domestic life, which just feels like you're somewhere in the woods in the mud sometimes. So anyway, this all leads to the question. We've got 20 minutes for questions. We're going to open it up. I'm going to ask the first one with that kind of prelude, because one thing that is really beautiful that you've done in particular this year, which I've unfortunately not borne witness to because my son only went 2 times a little early in the morning, but you go almost every day over to Jamie Gloucester's house and say morning prayer with him and with teenage boys, and that seems to be like an icon of the way virginal state and the married state are together to remind us of the essential sacrifice and virginity of what we're all called to. I wonder if you could speak just a little bit about that, and then we'll ask questions.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say that I kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the year, and started showing up fewer days out of the week. But it's been a really big gift to me to go over and experience Jamie and Danielle's home, and to be welcomed into their family and the wider family. Tom and April's boys were there like almost every day, as was Shinkevich, and a few others besides, and like a wider rotating cast. And what I experienced was really, a witness to, and I'm grateful for the question because it's like making me stop and reflect on it as well. A witness to the death of self that's still needed in the married life, very much so. And a participation, they say it takes a village to raise a man, a participation as like kind of a member of the village in the fatherhood of that household, and like the fatherhood of like those like other households as well. Recognizing and embracing the fact that like I actually have a formative role in these young men's lives as well. And that's a good thing. Yeah. I think that's what I have to say to that right now. Thanks for the question.
Beautiful, thank you. Any other questions? We'll start with Andy and then Tom.
Annie is one of the people that I had in college classes.
Thank you, brother. That was wonderful, very helpful. I just wanted to see if you could speak to the relationship of human and emotional formation as sort of a precondition for having the ears to hear one's vocation, and can you hear what God is calling you to if you don't have, if you don't know yourself,
If I had like,
and how you do that within the context of family.
sure, yeah. If I had like gone and tried to write this as like an academic paper, I might have like as an introduction started with like Peter Paley from It's a Wonderful Life, George Paley's father. And the reason for that is because I think the movie does an excellent job. Peter Paley's not a complicated character; he's just a good father. And what you see happening though is the fact that like George is prepared at each step of like his journey where things don't go the way that he expected. He doesn't go on like the big long trip. He doesn't like wind up going away to school. He keeps getting called to like stay and to like pour his life into like his local community. So I just kind of offer that as like what I think is a really beautiful example of like that sort of human and emotional formation that you're kind of like asking about a little bit. Like George had it, and he was able to, even though it was very much a cross for him, and it was very painful for him, he was able to like say yes to each of those things. Concretely speaking, one of the things that came to my mind that I didn't say specifically within the context of this is like that virginal expression of love that you mentioned is first and foremost meant to be expressed between the spouses themselves. There's like a respect that the husband needs to have for his wife, and the wife needs to have for her husband, and like that relationship is like most important after each of those individuals' relationship with God. But the modeling that I saw, and that I've also learned through my own formation since like becoming an adult in my family, is that it's incredibly important to model just like saying out loud the words, I was wrong when, I'm sorry for a specific thing, I forgive you, love you no less. Like those are the sort of things that I think, especially in the small things, that I think are like the most important. Because it's easy to kind of think like, yeah, I
Yeah, I wanted to ask some tips on giving your children freedom, because you said one thing that I think we need to be more careful about. You said people in this room will probably give their children freedom to follow their own vocation. Well, we know from friends of ours who are our generation that people have, it seems to be much more common than I remember from my childhood, of people breaking off the relationship with their children because of choices they made of spouse. Also, we do marriage preparation, and we raise this issue with college students who go to Benedictine when they're from religious families. Uh, this problem that they have of their families rejecting them because of choices they're making in their spouse or in their life. And I think I totally get it, because we've experienced the same kind of tension with our relationship with our children who've gotten married one day. Your daughter brings
And Ryan's
me-
sitting like right there.
Like, I guess. No, but I think the problem is our parents were too hands-off in our formation in many cases, and so we overcorrect. I think the world is scarier and more attractive than it was when I was younger, so we overcorrect. I also think that it's kind of the Amish people have to like let their kids go on a, you know, people who are enthusiasts of a religious bent need to have a way to let their kids choose it for themselves. And we have a really hard time doing that as religious people growing up in this culture. So I just wanted to ask more tips for freedom and kind of put people on notice that you have to figure out how to do this. It doesn't come very naturally. You literally, if you're a religious family, you go from 60 in your control of your kids to 0 overnight, and it's very disorienting and very hard to do.
That's a really good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I have a few thoughts though, and I think it's just really focusing on like I think you're right to highlight the fact that like their freedom needs to be loved. And I'll tell you something from like my perspective as someone who's working in like I'm the vocations director for St. Benedict's Abbey. I want good men to join St. Benedict's Abbey. Something that for me is sometimes a little bit of a concern is that if I have someone who's inquiring at the Abbey and I can tell they're not really in the driver's seat, like there's something else that's like actually like compelling them or leading them, and sometimes it's from their parents, sometimes it's from something else. But like that's the thing that like because that's what Benedict wants, and that's like what's actually involved in like the answering the call of the vocation. Like I need to be in the driver's seat. So there's a way in which like they need to be engaged in and this is like especially like the case like Aaron and I got to work with a bunch of high schoolers over the course of the past year in a GS group, which stands for Gioventù Studentesca, Student Youth. It's kind of like the high school version of communion and liberation. We get together for like school and community on a weekly basis with these teens. And I don't know, I realized it's such a crucial time of life for someone to kind of awaken to the fact that like I actually have agency and my life has meaning. And like I'm going to miss it unless I'm actively trying to pay attention to those things. And it's so beautiful too to see it like happening in like moments where it's like, oh my gosh, like they got it. Like what I think hopefully I told both of you about this, like what happened with Charlie when we went to the New York encounter, and he like was really struck by the beauty of the piano concert that we had like heard the night before. That was a moment for me of him very clearly being alive, very clearly standing in front of something beautiful, and very clearly being able to point to it and say like, this is good. And I don't really care about whether or not it's like cool to like say that, whether I'm like fitting in with my friends in this moment, but like this is good. And I think for the question that you're asking, they need to be like affirmed in the fact that like they have agency in their lives, that they're being invited to that. They also need to be affirmed in the fact that like they have intrinsic value no matter what. conversation that we had when I called you back when I was a focus missionary after my first retreat here, and I said, Mom, I think I might be called to be a monk. Do you remember what you said over the phone? I remember you saying, well, so long as what you want to do with your life is neither illegal nor immoral. Your father and I are with you. And I remember thinking in the moment, like, Mom, that's not a very high bar. But that was actually really important, because that told me that, like, all right, this is great. From a certain perspective, I can't screw this up. So I think it's really important to, once again, like, the question is big, but the answer is small. Like, it needs to happen little bits, like peppered throughout the days. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks for the question.
I'm channeling not as an answer to the question, but just a phrase that Tori said last year, which was, you're the first 12 years of your kid's life to propose your journey. The next 12 years, follow them on their journey. Walk out the door.
Aaron, could you repeat that?
You have the first 12 years of your kid's life to propose your journey to them. And then you have the next 12 years of your kid's life to follow them, like accompany them on their journey. And if you don't go with them, they will leave. They won't come back.
I'm allowed first, it's okay. I'm gonna pick your brain. As a Benedictine, right, you have your rules. I would ask you, what are those rules that you have to live by that you think are best applicable for us to bring into our own home? What are those rules of Benedict that we can bring into our houses and our families and apply those to help them foster that relationship that we all, are constantly desperately trying to find deep?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I think Benedict proposes the rule as like the way. It's interesting to me too, because like when you think about a ruler, like a rule of life is meant to be something by which you measure the value of things. Like, does this fit in or does it not? Is it going to help me or is it not? And I think I just read to you the 72nd chapter. I think as monks we kind of like develop our favorites for like the rule, the things that strike us the most. I know this is one that Prior Levin finds really striking, because when he was a vocations director and I was his assistant, he would talk about this a lot. Chapter 72, the good zeal of monks. Just as there is a wicked zeal of bitterness which separates from God and leads to hell, so there is a good zeal which separates from evil and leads to God and everlasting life. That's good. This then is the good zeal which monks must foster with fervent love. And this is really striking too, because like in like the list of like how-tos, here's what he says. They should each try to be the first to show respect to the other, supporting with the greatest patience one another's weaknesses of body, that's hard, or behavior, that's hard, and earnestly competing in obedience to one another. No one is to pursue what he judges better for himself, but instead what he judges better for someone else. To their fellow monks, they show the pure love of brothers, to God loving fear, to their abbot unfeigned and humble love. Let them prefer nothing whatever to Christ, and may he bring us all together to everlasting life. I offer that because that's like the last word, and then like the 73rd chapter is almost kind of like a list of recommended further reading for Benedict. And the last word that he says isn't make sure you have the observance down, make sure that everyone's on time for everything, make sure that like everything's clean, because cleanliness is next to godliness. He mentions those things early in the rule because they're important, but the last thing that he says when he wants to say the thing that's going to kind of stick with you is obedience. Obedience to the needs of others. And I would say like just like I said earlier, there's like no formula. Otherwise, everyone should just let their kids watch SpongeBob and play Pokemon. Like it's going to be dependent on like what you guys see operative within your families and the needs that like particular children manifest. Another thing that Benedict does over and over again in the rule is he kind of gives the abbot the opportunity and That's an excellent question. The first thing I'd say is you should just ask April for the notes of the talk that she gave for the symposium this last year. I still need to read them, but from what I heard of them, it's like very pertinent to this question. How do I go about building community? How do I go about taking what it is that I've experienced here during this retreat for a family week at Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas, where there's kind of like a community that's already very alive and vibrant. You can do what my parents are going to do, which is just like move here. So that's an option. One identified.
You haven't done it yet.
Well, you're in the process. you already came down with a trailer full of stuff. Like it's happening. But I think that's maybe if it's not like a tenable option, like maybe that's there's a temptation to just kind of run away into fantasy there. It's like, oh man, if only we could like move to Atchison. Oh man, if only we could move to like Front Royal, Virginia. Oh man, if only we could move to like some other place where this is like already happening. And I was thinking about this earlier today, just because like I noticed the same thing that they're like this is a really beautiful event, but like a lot of y'all are from Atchison. You're coming here from further away, and chances are you have a desire for seeing something like what you experience here happen in your own place. Once again, I've been formalist. I'm sorry. What I would say is pay attention to the places where it's already happening, and then prefer like love them, nourish them, protect them, like do something to kind of help the life that's already happening happen more and become more full. And like the poem talks about this too. It's the last stanza. I give you what is unbounded, passing from dark to dark, containing darkness. The night of rain and early morning. I give you the life that I have let live for the love of you. Like there's when I was thinking about this, I actually thought like, there's a lot of phrases I think that you could just substitute Atchison in for Rome. Atchison wasn't built in a day. Like also, it is my opinion that all roads do lead to Atchison. But Atchison wasn't built in a day. Like there's no reason for why it needs to stay here either. I think the reason for why a lot of us are here is because this is a clearing for us, and the call for us is to be on retreat for the sake of going back into the woods, so that other clearings can be made, so that other people can find refuge in them. Maybe even people who don't like have an experience of the church and who need that experience of goodness in their lives. I don't know if that's helpful. Those are good questions. Thank you. Yes. I don't know what your name is. I'm sorry. What's your name?
Mariah.
Mariah.
And I apologize because this is not my intention.
I
But wanted
forgive
to
you.
respond a little bit to your question. Because I think in Topeka, we have a pretty awesome thing going on as far as community as well. And not like say go to Topeka, but I think what has really helped to build it is people's willingness to inviting people into their homes, inviting people to come out to the park together, inviting people to participate in the rosary together. It's like there are people in our group more brave than I who invite us in a lot, and I think that has really developed that community more than anything else. So just wanted to make that clear. And there's people nodding here because they know.
Shout out to Topeka as well. A shout out to Topeka as well as Atchison.
Same route.
Same railroad. That's right.
Anything else? I think we have time for one more question. If there is.
So dying to self, you think of pain. But is there anything that you died to self and you found a lot of peace with that you, if you wouldn't have become a monk, you would have used and thought, oh man, if I was single, this would have been so great to have when I was younger, or so things that could apply to us as well.
Can
Okay, so the question is, you were talking about dying to self, and maybe that's a painful process,
Right.
but through the process you realize that it's not painful or that there's fruit. And I think we're wondering if there is anything positive at the outset of when you're dying. You're recognizing those selfish acts maybe inside of you, and you're killing those off. That's easy at the beginning instead of difficult at the beginning.
Right. And I think you had an aspect of asking about like my experience of like if I had followed the other path, like something that I would have missed out on and like didn't get to experience, but like now do get to experience. Is that right?
Yes, or is it, maybe it's your vow of poverty, giving everything away, or no social media, or whatever it is that you gave up and you just look back and go, oh my gosh, I was so bound by these things, I didn't even realize, and now that I'm free of them, I wish I would have done this previous.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I understand. Something that I thought was going to be really hard for me was like not dancing at weddings, and that's just kind of I don't know. It's something that like I knew was probably going to be a part of the deal because the image of like a monk dancing at a wedding, the way that I used to dance at weddings was like just much more. And I mean, you can ask them if they would miss this. I was debated it, but I was happy. And this actually reminds me of something that I experienced early on in my time in the monastery, where Father Jay, who was my postulate director at the time, needed to pull me aside and like go for like a little walk with me to have a talk. And what he said to me was he wanted to talk to me about some like an immaturity that he had noticed in me that he thought was like getting in the way of me fully embracing life. And the way that he broached that topic was, you have to stop dabbing. And he was right. And he identified that as just kind of like a moment of like I had this image of like I was gonna bring life and zest to the monastery, which is true. Like youth, when it comes to the monastery, does do that, but it needs to also be willing to like be formed and undergo transformation. So for me, that I think is actually something I probably would have experienced within the context of a married vocation, but it would have happened in a different way. I'll throw it. I don't know where Jackson is. Where's Jackson? I'll throw him under the bus for a moment because I think it was the day that Bernie was born. You said like, man, I was gonna like. I remember you saying like things are so different for me now because earlier today I was thinking I'm gonna go get a moped, and then your first son was born, and you're like, no, not anymore. The cash was in hand. Yeah, you were ready. Well, like I suppose that's to say like I don't. It reminds me of like of that space, like the beautiful speech at the end. Like I haven't missed out on anything. Like I still have like the same sort of like formative experiences, but they look different concretely for me. I hope that answers your question. It's helpful. Oh man, we have time for like maybe
One more. No, we're at time. Sorry.
We need a break.
Catch me after.
We're gonna take about 10-minute break, and then we're gonna come back in here for couch couple. Danielle and Jamie Blosser. Jamie's invited. You're invited. Yeah.
That was the end.
And people will be like, well, I need all, yeah. But, no, see, the thing is, it's a play on the Catholic side. It's communication, it's not clear. And,
although we swapped it over now.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's right.
What do you say? Yeah. It works.
He was waiting for Luca yesterday for 12 hours. His brothers are older.
What was that? So we're still today.
It was the same. Now going over the equalizer. No, and I was ready. I was taking to myself. Wow. And I wrote, it's my boy. It wasn't exactly the time when I was falling in love with the field like exactly. And I should have it every day. Yeah, it's complicated. He touches so many layers. It's gonna get out. So right now, it's yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, it's time for you to come in. If you're outside, somebody, Lindsay, tell them out there to come inside. Thank you. Troy's mic, yeah.
I'll take the floor. Yes.
I may have to.
Yeah, whatever. So when was Leo born? February 19th. Oh, wow. 10 days before my birthday. 29th. February's a good month. Okay, as everybody's gathering, can you hear me all right? No. Yeah. Can you hear me? Is that okay? No. So, let me ask you the handheld. Can you hear me? Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So let's all get seated. Okay, every year we do a session called Couch Couple, and we do one a day. So we usually get 4 in for the week, sometimes 5. It's always a highlight of Family Week. We always get great reviews on Couch Couples. And the reason is it's not overly scripted. I mean, we just have a conversation, which we open up who the couple is, and they talk to us about what they've learned about marriage, what they've learned about God and family and love through their marriage. So this is Jamie and Danielle Blosser, and I'm going to interview them right now. How are you guys? So, Jamie and Danielle, I know, yeah, I think you have to push it up.
Hello.
Now you're known in the Atchison community, but about 3/4 of our folks are not from Atchison. So, why don't you just give us some vital statistics, like how long you've been married, how many children you have, where are you from, just some things like that.
Difficult question.
We met in North Carolina, as Aaron Riches pointed out earlier, at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
I was raised in North Carolina. Danielle grew up overseas in the Middle East. Her dad still works over there. But she came to America for college.
How long have you been married? Yes.
24 years. 24 years.
You might want her to answer that.
24 years.
Oh, actually, he knows our anniversary and I don't. So, he's right.
Too many birthdays, too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say here, one of my objectives in the couch couple interview is that there's no need for marital therapy afterwards. I really try to keep this easy. So, okay, you've been married 24 years. How many children do you have?
Okay. 11.
11.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And you have one here. I've never interviewed 3 people on couch couples. So you've got a little guy here. Tell us about him.
Hopefully he won't be included in the interview if he stays quiet. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Leo was born about 3.5 months ago. We were pleased the Holy Father named himself after our son.
Yeah, that's how I take it.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to talk over him, because usually I talk constantly. So I told him I was going to try to let him answer. So if you think he's dominating, it's because I'm trying not to.
If I know the answers, it's been difficult so far.
Well, that's good. That's good. Let's love to see this dynamic play itself out here. That's good.
It will end up with me talking constantly.
No, no.
And probably crying.
No, I will cry. I will cry. I will definitely cry.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. That's allowed too. Okay, well, let me go back to the North Carolina part, Chapel Hill. How did you all meet there?
We met during orientation, freshman year, in the cafeteria. Met at the salad bar, love at first sight. She was ravishing, and I think is still ravishing. I was thinking it was sort of a metaphor for our whole relationship. I was sitting by myself, probably lost in my own thoughts, probably I had a book nearby. And she was sitting at a table full of people she had collected into her orbit. And I got sucked into the orbit. And ever since, she's been pulling more and more people into the orbit.
Now it's a galaxy. Now it's a galaxy. Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I know a little bit about you guys. You weren't raised Catholic, is that right? So you had
Neither of us was
you
raised
had a
Catholic.
spiritual journey into the church. And did it start at Chapel Hill?
Yes. So we were both raised as devout Protestant evangelicals. I was a religion major at Chapel Hill State University, but I was exposed to church history, which is a very dangerous thing, as you know, for a Protestant to encounter. So I studied my way into the church, probably sophomore, junior year of college. I grew up in the Bible Belt, so I had to overcome a lot of anti-Catholicism in myself and also in friends and family. So it was difficult for me. Growing up in the Middle East, Danielle didn't have that baggage. So she was probably a more willing and eager participant in the journey than I was. So I went to RCIA in Chapel Hill. She was studying, she was working at L'Arche in France with mentally handicapped the year after graduation, and she joined the church there.
And I remember when he first told me he was going to become Catholic, he started crying. We were in a coffee shop, and it was hard for somebody who was raised in like the Baptist world to. And my best friend told me she felt like I was going to become Mormon. She was like sobbing, and it was really hard to do that in North Carolina. My biggest hang-up was Mary. I could not get over Mary being the perfect mother, but also a virgin,
And contraception. You said,
contraception.
I don't want to have all those babies.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. I said when he said, Catholics don't believe in contraception, I said, don't even talk to me about that. I'm the one who's going to be having the babies. And he didn't talk to me about that. Because he acknowledged that I was going to be the one having the babies. But
And she did.
I did have the babies. 11 babies.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, I know a little bit about what that's like. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You married after Chapel Hill?
The summer after graduation, yes.
Summer after.
In Chapel Hill.
Okay. And you'd come back from L'Arche. Okay. And then you guys went on to Catholic University, is that right? Or,
Yeah, I went to Catholic University in Washington for my studies. She moved there a year later because she spent another year in L'Arche. No, that doesn't work out.
No, like a year.
You were there before
Yeah.
marriage, so yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, we went to, I studied, so we were, lived in Washington DC area and Virginia, Northern Virginia for about 6 years, I think, while I was finishing my studies at
Okay.
Catholic.
Now, one of the things I always like to ask couples is, tell us about a time in your marriage, other than the birth of your children, but you can if you want, that brought you closer together. And then tell us a time that was a challenge that really put a strain on your marriage. And you can share whatever you want, as much or as little.
Sure. What were the two things? The second one was
One
the
that
challenge.
brought you closer together, and one that had the potential to pull you apart, but didn't. But it was a strain. It was a hard thing to go through.
I think both would be the same thing. So we have done foster care on and off for about the last 12 years or so, maybe longer, yeah. So, and there's one particular group of, it was originally just one, but now it's 3 siblings, half siblings, who live about a half hour outside of Atchison. So we fostered the one pretty much since his birth, and he went in and out of our care, back to his mother, and then he had a sibling, and she came into our care immediately. And then later on they had another half sibling. So they went back and forth between their mother and us. The oldest two called us mommy and daddy because they were probably as close to us as to their own mother. And it was difficult, I think, to see the way that they were being raised in a way that was very destructive of their personhood. But, so we loved them, having them with us, but it was always hard to see them go back. And we were torn both ways, torn in half there, just, not being their biological parents and not having control of their lives, but being so deeply invested in them. We developed a good relationship with their mother, which to some extent we still have. Even when they were in her care, she brought them to us and let them stay with us. And she became a good friend. Actually, she agreed to their baptism, the older two. And even though she was not religious at all, we arranged for their baptism, religious education, first communion. So we sort of been raising them together, oddly enough. But right around COVID, all 3 got removed from their mother's care. And Danielle had just had a baby. I don't know how old.
I've always just had a baby, right?
Every time.
Not all my life.
Every time they So when the oldest came into our care, our Cyril was a newborn. And so the two of them Cyril's closer to him than to his own siblings. And so anyway, they came back into our care. And then at this point, COVID had just broken out, so everything was, all social services were shut down. They had, I think, tried some family and none of it was working out. So we got a call from the sheriff's office. Just the 3 kids were there in the sheriff's office with nowhere to go. They had removed our license to foster because you can't foster if you have more than 6 children under the same roof in the state of Kansas, which is insane. So we had no license, but they said, we'll let you do it if you'll take them because no one else wants them. So we had there was obviously no choice, but it was terrible timing for us. The lack of preparation we had to prepare our own kids for it. We had never met or barely met the youngest one, who had a lot of baggage because he wasn't raised by us at all. The schools were kind of shut down, so we ended up having to sort of wing it with the education of some of them. It didn't really work out very well. And anyway, almost everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and then worse. And so it was hard on us and hard on them. And I don't know, they weren't even in our house that long, I think. But it was difficult, and we really wanted to do right by them, but it was hard for us to do. So I think we realized our limitations. I don't think we always communicated terribly well, and didn't always see eye to eye what was best for the kids. Discipline was probably the hardest thing, because they were completely undisciplined, and didn't really know how to discipline the kids. And they demanded a lot from us in terms of time and energy, and that ended up, hard for us to give, because it clearly took away from our own children. So that was hard. But I think we grew together a lot and learned a lot from the process, learned our own need to communicate, our need to rely on each other and trust each other. They're coming again this weekend.
Well, what he neglected to say is after that, their mom accused us of abusing them pretty badly, so we got investigated by DCF. And so then I just never wanted to see them again. It was really painful. And now, we're looking into potentially adopting them, because they're back in foster care, and it's been a long journey. So we're in the throes of it now. Last night we were praying again and entrusting them into the hands of Mary and the whole process. You can say a prayer for us, because we need it and they need it.
What are their ages, the children? 14,
13, and 7.
This is partially why when you asked me how many kids I have, I didn't really know how to answer that.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I mean, that definitely is a good excuse.
You might not have known anyway. Don't ask him anybody's birthday, how old anybody is.
I think of myself as having 14 children.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, let me probe that a little bit, because that is so countercultural. So, and yeah, we know what the church teaches, but why did you decide to be faithful and take this journey of having a large family? Because not all Catholics do.
I'm going to answer that first, because for me, I will tell you what I did. It's because of him. Because he's such a great dad. He's such a great dad. He makes dinner every single night. I wake up every morning and my breakfast is on the counter. He's such a great dad. And so for me, this last baby is a gift to him. I was like, there's nothing better I can give him. He loves our kids so much. He loves me so much, he loves our family so much, and he gives everything. And so, even though I'm I don't know if I can handle it, there's nothing like the look in his eyes when I tell him that I'm pregnant and when he sees the baby. And he's there all along. So for me, that's why I have kids, and that's why I'm willing to do extra mile with these other kids too. That's my answer. I don't know about you. Probably because I'm just willing to keep them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I don't know if I'm good at being a father. I really enjoy it, and it brings out. There's 2 times when I feel fully alive, and one is in front of a classroom, and the other is with kids. So I don't know how good I am at either, but I really enjoy doing it. So I figure I'll just keep doing what I'm good at, or at least what I enjoy. Yeah, every time she has a baby, she swears she's never doing it again, and then I just wait.
He makes some chocolate chip scones. Leaves them on the counter in the morning.
That's your first sign.
I will say we never planned on having. I didn't think we ever planned anything. I honestly, early before I got married, around the time if you would have asked me, I would have said 2 kids. That's what was sort of normal for me. That was my vision if I had a vision. But we just had, as someone said to us, 1 + 1 is 2, and 2 + 1 is 3, and 3 + 1 is 4. So it was never, I think that's what made it work, it's like the frog in the pot, right? Like,
Frog like dies.
We don't work on that analogy. That's not the best.
I have nothing to give you but my death.
Oh, you boil me alive.
I think, you've said this before, if someone would have told you you would have had 11 kids, you would have not walked down that path. I think, it would have seemed, it does seem insane to me, but like having 10, I'm like, oh, I think we can handle one more, you know. There's room for one more on the table, it's just an extra chicken breast in the pot, you know. So one more never seems like too much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's partly foster care too, is just, you know, once your house is complete, what I call loving chaos, once your house is completely loving chaos, what's one more? You know, more chaos.
That's great. So, tell us, because, you know, you are heavily invested in the college, both as a professor in administration, and tell us about how that part of your life has worked with being parents. Benedictine College, and you see that having been, I'm assuming, a positive thing, but there may be some challenges in that too.
I don't know, very positive. I mean, our whole life is wrapped up in the college, not so much the institution or even source of financial income, though it is that, but just the community. I mean, almost all of our friends are faculty, staff, administrators at the college. Almost all of our kids' friends, well, most of them. Our neighborhood is just, you know, so it's not the college as an institution, it's just like my analogy earlier with the solar system, like the college has drawn into its orbit. I mean, and all of you, whether or not you work for the college, you're all drawn into the orbit in some sense. So the college has a way of drawing into its orbit people like you know, who just associate themselves with the institution, and then people bring with them their families. And so I would say the families who were associated in some way or the other with the college, we live just 3 blocks away. So, but not, so it's the college has been very, very good to me. I tell this to my bosses, the college has been very good to me in terms of providing a stable income and place of employment for me so I can support my family. But not only that, we homeschool our children. We're gifted with the ability to homeschool our children, and most of their tutors and teachers are, Andy Jager teaches my kids philosophy, Jeremy Sienkiewicz teaches them theology. So, you know, that's been a gift. Almost every afternoon, evening, they're down at the BC College soccer fields playing soccer or watching a game, you know. So our high school age kids will take classes at the college as part of their supplementing their high school education. So yeah, the college community has been a big boon for us.
Well, how about the Atchison community? Because I know you're involved through foster caring. Have you made other inroads into the Atchison community, the non-Benedictine side of it?
No, I mean, like, with that particular family,
Yeah.
they live in Horton. I like Atchison because I'll give random people rides if I see a woman with her groceries. I feel like it's kind of a safe place. I don't think I do that in a bigger city.
Yeah.
So I know some people that way. But
No, our involvement with what we call the townies around here, the townies outside of the college community is fairly minimal. I mean, our kids play soccer on the city rec league, and so they do meet people from the public schools and so on. But honestly, our involvement is not as much as we would like.
Well, I mean, you're pretty maxed out, I think. 14 kids.
What do you want, Tori?
14 kids and three of them your foster children. That's amazing. That's wonderful. I didn't know that about you, actually, so I'm so glad. So glad to learn that. So what else do you want us to know about you, what you've learned about marriage, family? Were you raised in a Muslim culture?
No, I was raised in a Muslim country, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
were your parents missionaries or?
No, my dad taught, he taught at the American University of Beirut in the School of Medicine. We spent our lives like evacuating different places. And then, so now he runs a nonprofit organization in Jordan and works with Syrian refugees and also the Gaza Strip, getting healthcare in and yeah, he's amazing, man. Yeah. And and the other thing, we don't have internet in our house and we don't have cell phones. I think that's a big part of our lives. Or not a big part of our lives. Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
Well, staying unplugged has been a commitment we made early on. It was easy for us because I was raised very unplugged.
Yeah, it was definitely.
So
There was like, yeah.
Off the grid. So staying off the grid.
Yeah. Yeah, this sounds like heaven to me. So that's great. I feel like there's something else I need to ask you, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I usually just let this conversation flow, but I don't feel like I've gotten all the juice out of the lemon, as it were. So tell us, okay,
Brian Fig has a question.
I have a question.
Wait. I got this one, and then you
Go
can
for
ask.
it, and then I'm next.
You're next. I'm at the age, if I don't ask my questions, I forget them.
No, that's fine.
And, but Danielle, early on, you made a beeline to thank me for Family Week, and you've been really faithful. Tell me what it is you like about Family Week. Because I didn't ask you.
Well, I'm a lover. I love things. So I think really it was the first, I don't know, but I'll say this. I don't know what I meant when I thanked you for it. But like the second year, like the first year we watched a movie the last night. And Father did not like that, and neither did I. And I had my kids out because I didn't want them to watch the movie, even though I really liked it and I wanted to watch it. But the second year we did like this talent show music thing, and just like let me see if I can articulate this. Like in Atchison, I feel like we have something very beautiful, like great community, blah blah blah. Topeka's great too. I heard that outside. That's like the one thing I heard. That Topeka's great too. And but then seeing all the children together and all the families in that moment at the end, I was actually crying at the end. It was so beautiful. There's something really, really, really beautiful. Like it was like the little girls, a lot of times when you see girls dancing, it's a little bit like raunchy because they're watching Lord knows what on television. All the little girls were dancing these beautiful dances that had like no raunch to them. And there was just something like that struck me that was just overwhelming. Like something huge, like when God brings together people from all over. And it's so different than just living in a place with the people you live with. And I don't know. So that's one thing that strikes me as why I love it so much. Yeah.
You know, we can be, the Atchison communities, we have a very strong community, very tight network, and we have our own dysfunctions, but we can be kind of closed off in Citadel on a hill as well, and so it's great to see people from other communities. Athanasius, I think our seventh, was saying last night, someone, I think it was one of Matt,
he was hoping
one of Matt and Manuskas, is it David, or said he's my best friend. I see him every year.
When I said you guys might not come because I didn't know because you're in DC now, I was like, I don't know. He was devastated. And that's like a once-a-year friendship. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think one of the wonderful things I've learned about Family Week is all that horizontal relating that goes on that isn't scripted, that just happens in these friendships, and they become life-changing for everybody. Okay, you had a question back here.
Jamie, this is the first time I have not seen you with a book since I've known you since college. Where do you find time to read?
At the playground when you should be watching our kids.
I can witness to that. I was at one of those playgrounds, yeah. But it's so you can multitask when you
I
get a certain
learned
age.
in reading, I learned the art of just snatching half a page
Yeah.
here and there when I can get it. As a consequence, I can't sit down and read continuously for more than 5 minutes. I do something else. But I can finish a book in no time, just half a page here, half a page there.
Yeah. No.
These breaks between sessions have been good.
Oh, gotta keep those breaks going.
Being antisocial helps.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it becomes a virtue, when you have a book in your hand. Okay. Well, good. Anybody else have a question for this couple? This has been a great education.
Yes, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys keep talking about the Atchison community and how tight knit it is, but it's really because of you guys and like the Hoopses and others who created this intentional community, which now we are benefiting from moving here way after you had. So I know the question was asked, how do you create community where you are? What would be your suggestions to people on creating intentional community where you are? Because like Atchison this didn't happen by itself. It's because of you guys. So what would be your advice to others?
Okay. So, like, I'll give you an example. When I first moved here, I talked to a mom, and I'm like, oh, I just had a few little kids, and I was like, I'd love to come over sometime and, like, hang out with you, and she's a really good friend now. She was like, we're really busy. We are really busy. I don't know. And now she's a great person. She's a great person. That's her. But, like, I was like, I never, ever, ever, ever want to give somebody that answer, ever. Like, I was like, I never, ever want to do that because it was really crushing. And so I don't actually leave my house very much. So I like people to come over. I never tell somebody that they can't come over or that I'm too busy. And sometimes it drives my kids crazy because we're in the middle of a math lesson and somebody comes over. So we also have, a lot of times it's not the parents, it's the kids, right, Lindsay? Like, just letting the kids come and go and letting the teenagers have their friends over and eating all of our food. And it's just like, I think that's more where it happens, is loving all the kids that come by and go between everybody's houses and providing them a good place to be. One time a little boy was riding down the street, a neighbor kid who I barely knew, from school on his bike. He runs up the porch, he's like, can I use your bathroom? And I'm like, yeah, so he like rushes in, uses the bathroom, rushes out. We always call him Big Boy Tires, because he had big tires, I don't even know his name. But like, just like a open house policy, especially for kids.
I think because we don't really have screens in the house, the kids are always outside, the boys especially, doing something. And so there's always some activity going on in the house, and I think other neighborhood kids know that. I suspect if you stop by the Blosters, someone's going to be on the trampoline or building a fort in my front yard, digging a pit in my backyard, which they did. So I think also just being patient, I bought about 20 peaches on Sunday. The Petrocelli kids ate half of them. And, okay, but I can buy more peaches, I just, and everyone, not with your kids, but sometimes you do have to have a talk with the kids or the parents about, but I think just, let them come and put up with more chaos. Danielle's also good about intentionally, especially on like Easter and Thanksgiving, she invites all the sort of low-income people in our neighborhood who are probably the last person I would want in my house during a Thanksgiving dinner. People who, any very uncultured, ungroomed people, but she invites them now they come to count on it, and they schedule it and plan it every Easter and Thanksgiving. So So she's very good about deliberately inviting people into our orbit, like I said at the very beginning, and just letting people come who want to come. So our kids who were in college, they will routinely, actually it was just, my oldest son called last night and said, hey, I'm going to bring one of my kids for dinner tonight, my friends, sorry, for dinner tonight. I said, we're not going to be here, it'll be a family weekend anyway. So, but they routinely bring their friends back.
And then he's like, can we come to the cafeteria at Family Week? And Jamie's like, well, maybe you can, but you can't like bring all your friends.
So yeah, it's just having the house be a nest that all the birds can come back to whenever they want.
It's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thanks for opening up your lives. And really, it's a great sign that Leo was born before the Pope took his name. I think it's a great sign for us in our church and in our country. I'm excited to see what he grows up to be, what our Pope grows up to be. Okay, we can all go on to lunch, right? Yeah, Paul, you got some marching orders?